Good evening and welcome to Interface. My name is Rems Mabote. A 4-year-old is killed in a car hijacking. And now the community of Reiche Park are baying for the blood of the suspects who killed little Tiger and Morris. The police are calling for calm and are offering 100,000 rand reward for any information on the crime. Communities around the country know all too well the pain caused by crime and want the police to do more, but can they? To discuss these issues, we welcome Trevor Ribi, the chairperson of Reiche Park Community Policing Forum, and also Elijah Tsokodibani, chairperson of Moroka Community Policing Forum, and Diane Kola Barnett, DA Member of Parliament from Parliament Studio. We invited the Gauteng police, but they said they are not able to participate. Please feel free to post your comment or questions on our Facebook page, Interface on SABC 2. Good evening, gentlemen, and good evening, Diane in Cape Town. Trevor, I have to ask you this question because we can all pay for blood, we can all complain about the police not doing their job, but the guy who steals goods, the guy who hijacks these cars, the guy who breaks into my house lives in the same community that you and I live in. We know these people. Why should it be the police problem?
Well, it is not only the police's problem, and therefore it is a joint venture. It's a partnership between the police and the community. Can never be the prevention of crime can never only be the police's problem. And I think this is why, and you have CPFs in every community. In fact, every police station, as far as I know, should have a CPF.
It's probably 20 years of CPFs around. Crime is not necessarily diminished. Are we winning?
I think we're winning. It is unfortunately not a easy way. One needs to take this step by step. CPFs, by its nature, are people who volunteer from time to time. And therefore, today you have a very good CPF operating in an area, and tomorrow the CPF is not well structured and they're not working as good, and therefore you do not have the results that you can have.
Elijah, I live in townships and I see what happens every day there. People live around criminals. People know the criminals. They befriend them. They drive cars with them. At which point do we then separate a criminal at night when they go to do their job and during the day when we have fun with them at the buy and bri?
I think we've got to really say we've got to identify them 24 hours. It is not going to really help us to identify them at a certain time of the day. We've got really to say this person is a criminal, whether it's during the night, whether it's during the day, and make sure that we make aware that this person is dangerous to the community.
There is an element of liability on the part of communities, though. I mean, you do what you do, but the people who hobnob with these criminals, the people that you represent every day, they know them. Do they come to you and say, I know Rems is a criminal, I know Rems sells nyaope? You may not have been making inroads with the communities, especially. You probably are making good friendships with the police, but not with the communities that you're serving.
Well, some they do come to tell us here at a certain this place, there's people that are selling drugs. And we definitely make the police aware to go there and make search and, if possible, arrest.
Diane Kolapana, let me bring you in here. It's very easy for everybody, and I'm sure as a member of Parliament for the Democratic Alliance, you know this well too often, that we blame the police for not doing enough. And they would have been here to answer for themselves. We asked them to do so, they haven't come. But my question to you is, the guy who commits crime is a small man. He saves somebody bigger out there. There's a guy who buys the metal. There's a guy who buys the stolen wires. He's a bigger guy. He's probably not as petty criminal. So are we focusing on the wrong people here?
Well, I think you've probably put your finger on the problem. Nationally, we're desensitized. There are 45 murders a day. The rate has gone up again. So it's only those murders that are particularly terrible, such as this particular one of Tegrin Morris, the little 4-year-old boy, that really hit the headlines, and they ignite communities, and that's where you start fearing that some sort of vigilantism is going to become the practice in that community, because they get to the stage where they say the police aren't doing anything. But you've got detectives with 150 murder dockets on their desk, not knowing which one to deal with first. So that is an issue. But we also heard about the small drug peddler on the corner of the street. That person, if you arrest him, is replaced by 10 others in 10 minutes by the drug lords. The drug lords are fed by the international, transnational cartels. They don't recognize the borders. We drive to a border chasing a criminal and we stop as they cross over to another country. We don't have permission to go across. You know, we recognize sovereignty. Certainly these organized international syndicates don't. So they fly through the airspace, they land at private little bases, they drive onto our shores. They don't recognize borders at all. So they outgun us, outman us, outfly us. They really are way ahead of us. And I've had presentations at international congresses on this and how globally these matters need to be dealt with. So that is where one has to aim.
The picture you paint,
at a very,
though,
very high level.
You're painting a picture of despondency. You're saying to me, we're not going to win this. We're not capable. We're not better than we can be.
I'm painting the picture as it is, but the picture is also being focused on very carefully at the United Nations and nationally and hopefully provincially. It was said by, I think it was Trevor, who said it has to be a united effort.
Correct.
Government, provincially, locally, and the communities. And it's quite right. Many communities know the names of the people who are committing crime in the area. And they do nothing until such time, because usually criminals don't do the crime in their own area. They go outside the area to the next door neighbor and do it. And everyone keeps silent. But keeping silent means that if you keep silent, the lady in the next community will keep silent, and maybe it's your child next who's hooked on a seatbelt and dragged to their death. So it is every citizen's responsibility to tell the tale. Sadly, you know, the revelations that there are so many criminal police. We know the infamous 1,448.
Hold that thought. Hold that thought, Diane.
Sure.
I'm going to go back to the issue of the police just now. Trevor, then it leads to, sadly, people taking the law into their own hand, which makes CPFs useless.
If people do take the law into their own hands, yes. But here is where you know, I look at the CPF as a machine in an environment. And let me just compare it with the train, for example. If you look at the train, and the train operates effectively and efficiently in the area where it is, where there is tracks, where there is the feeder buses and so on. A CPF that has and operates at its maximum with all its stakeholders in place, with all with all the substructures in place, and of course a good relationship with the police management, definitely can reduce crime.
Hold that thought. Let's take a break. Because when I come back, I want to ask you a simple question, all three of you. Are the police winning the fight against crime? We come back after the break.
Presentation.
Welcome back. Unfortunately, as we said earlier, the police could not join us in this conversation. But we are still joined by our guest. Diane Kolapana is joining us from Cape Town. We're joined by Trevor and Elijah from the Community Policing Forums. I know you work with the police. I look at what happens with the young men in Reiger Park. I look at the other stories that we read this morning alone. Forget about the weekend, forget about the last year, forget about any other time. The impression I get is that the police are not winning the fight against crime.
They wouldn't win it alone. That's the start. They need a community involvement. You know, some of the things that the community is very reluctant in understanding this kind of interaction, you know. So it's a problem.
But Elijah, you have to admit, and I'm sure you hear it every day, people have lost confidence in the police. And they probably don't cooperate with the police.
I think, yes, they've lost confidence in the police. But one of the things that makes the community to lose confidence is the courts. Because the suspect will be arrested and tomorrow is back on the street. And the community do not understand that at the end of the day when the suspect has been arrested, it's out of the control of the police. Somebody is making a decision there, you know. And definitely they will always point their fingers to the community.
My understanding of the law is that even in court, the police should present the prosecution with a strong case to prosecute. So when the prosecution fails, it probably is that the police arrested the wrong suspect or they didn't have enough evidence.
Sometimes it's a case of bail. You cannot argue there. And the suspect, when he comes back, he would say, I told you that I'm familiar with the police and I'll be back, and here I am. And the community would not understand the process, you know?
Diane, I mean, it's difficult to speak about the police when they're not represented here. But are they adequate? Do we have adequate policing, or do we have policing that should give us hope that things will turn around at some point?
Well, we do. We're about to pass on Friday a 73 billion rand budget. Now, that should be absolutely adequate, but we still have police stations with water pouring through the roof or no electricity, no toilets. We have extraordinary situations where the money is not going in the right place, and we've just revealed now that there was about 150 million in irregular expenditure, 45 million wasted on meals. So lots of the money that should go to the stations doesn't. Be that as it may, the halcyon days of the FIFA World Cup in 2010 are over, and the crime rate has now started to go up again. They did try and cook the crime stats last year, but the reality is that all the violent crime, like this, the hijacking, the murders, the rapes, attempted murder, they're all up. And that means they're not winning the war against crime currently. We do have a new minister, so one can hope that things will turn around, but unfortunately it's under the same National Police Commissioner who's been unable to turn this tide around. So that's very, very difficult. And of course, the militarization of the SABC has made our citizenry very fearful of the police, and that makes them less inclined to want to talk with them, to go to them with information. They're fearful of them. They've seen the pictures of Abdul and Mido Masia. They're scared of them.
That is confusing. I promise you, when we open the lines, when we take Facebook messages, in fact, people are saying the police are meek, are mild. We need a stronger police officer. We need a guy who's militarized. We need a guy who's going to scare the criminals. And you saying the militarization has destroyed the confidence. I'm getting confused. Who's right? Who's wrong, Diane?
Well, I think it's perhaps a double-sided coin. We have police who were militarized so they could change their ranks, basically so Beki Cele could call himself general. And they had that whole shoot-to-kill mandate. Unfortunately, they shoot to kill and miss. They hit the citizens. We have huge numbers of complaints against the SABC, and nearly a third of the SABC budget could be used for contingent liabilities, paying out the families of people who've had members raped or beaten or murdered or run over or whatever by SABC members. So that's one side.
I'm sure that never happened because of shoot-to-kill.
We have the criminals.
You can't be suggesting that rapes and abuse happened because of the shoot-to-kill attitude.
No, I wasn't suggesting that. I'm saying it was a militarization. It was an us against the enemy. Like a defense force. Defense force are paid to kill the enemy. Police are supposed to arrest and then present a 100% watertight case which incarcerates the person. But that's what does not happen.
Thank you, Trevor. Look, you know, there's a story I've been reading here about Hillbrow. Anybody who knows Hillbrow knows that 20 years ago it was a different place. It was some haven that everybody enjoyed. And today it's a different city altogether. It's actually a different country in another country that is completely out of control. And across the road, by the way, is the Hillbrow police that they can't do anything about this place. It's one place. I said, don't we start by dealing with places like Hillbrow before South Africa looks like Hillbrow?
Yes, that is true. Looking at various areas, the police are currently winning the race against crime, but it is an up and down thing. Today it's this, tomorrow it's that. If you look at an area like Hillbrow, if you have a proper community policing forum where the trust is established between community and the police, you can go a lot further. I've seen that happening in our area. I think one of the biggest successes that we've had is when the community trusted the police, and the CPF did a huge...
The family of Tigran Morris would disagree with you. I saw them on our very own screens. His own grandmother said there is no confidence. She does not see any progress in crime prevention.
I would not argue about that. There is a long way to go. We have a long way to go, but I'm saying from where we're coming from, we have really made some strides with regard to that.
Let's take a break. We have to come back and talk about solutions because, of course, we can spend too much time complaining. At some point, we need to talk solutions. Stay with us. When we come back, we go back to our guest and conclude the show. Welcome back. We have received some of your comments on our Facebook page, and let me read some of them to you. JC De Brain says, yes, the police can do more simply by doing the job that taxpayers pay them to do. Mawetu Oryx Nokorom Kapili, that's a very long name, Mawetu. I don't see them winning the battle because there are so many police involved in criminal activities. Most of them are not in the police service to fight crime, but to earn money. Luzu Komsimanga says, while I will be the first to admit mob justice is not correct, but I can recall not so distant past when street committees were able to flush out these devils. The message is slightly longer and he's suggesting that this could be done in Reiger Park. Would you agree that at some point people must take the law into their own hands, Trev?
No, certainly not. But what I can agree on with the man is that he's mentioning something like street committees. And remember this example that I gave to you, that the Gautrain, a well-oiled machine. Mm-hmm. If we have the CPF, where every structure and stakeholders are in place, street committees is now one of the new initiatives that I'm very excited about, that we're hoping to implement. And with a proper street committees functioning, I can see us making a lot of progress, but certainly not looking at taking the law in our own hands, because we're just creating more problems.
But that is not giving any confidence. It doesn't give any confidence to the family of Tigran Morris. It does not give any confidence to somebody whose house was broken into last night to tell them, no, let's work together and have this thing that's coordinated. At some point, people are going to buy guns. People are going to hire somebody to take care of themselves.
Yeah, that's true. But I think we are doing our best to mobilize community and to make them to understand what needs to be done. And they are very much reluctant, especially if you look at each and every street having members of the street committee in that street. I think it will make criminals to be spotted on time. Because you'll identify somebody that you are not familiar with,
yeah.
And you'll also identify the house that it's really destroying the community in your area.
But as Diane said earlier, are we identifying the guy who's supplying this fellow, or who's the buyer of the stolen goods, or who's the supplier of drugs? Are we identifying the main culprit instead of the small guy who's breaking into my house to get another 50 bucks for Nyaope?
Not easy. Not easy. We've got to accept that.
Trevor, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I want to come in there, and I think if you've heard Chantal, Tigran Morris's mother,
yes.
That is where we are, and that is what we are looking at the moment. I think the community of Reiger Park is completely furious about getting the small guy. We are looking at behind that. We want the guy who placed an order for this car. We want the people behind the scenes. That is where we are. And I think with with the structures in place, and where we now have the community really upset to the point where they say, genoeg is genoeg, because that's the campaign that we're running at the moment. Say, genoeg is genoeg, and they're coming to the party. I certainly see light at the end of the tunnel.
Diane, the police have offered 100,000 rand reward for anybody who brings up the suspects that killed Tigran. Is that where we're going? Should we start making money available to get the big guys and the criminals?
Somebody knows who they are, but this is the tipping point. There's not a mother who has watched the interview of little Tigran Morris's mother saying what happened. All of us, our hearts just seized at the thought it might have been our son.
Yes.
Dragged off like that. So this is the tipping point. The communities are saying that's it, enough. So I'm very glad to hear that they're coming to the party as opposed to creating their own party. Because vigilantism, it's so easy for a community to kill the wrong person.
Correct.
For personal reasons, it happens over and over again. So really, it has to be used as a means. I was so delighted when the other young child who was driven off with was returned unharmed after all the appeals to the criminals. But I don't believe the two who drove off and dragged young Tigran to his death felt anything. I believe they were on drugs. They simply said, oh, well, let's just dump this car and go and get a clean one. And off they'd go. They have no conscience. They're on drugs, and that means zero inhibitions.
And
so it's got to be dealt with
is not going to solve it, is it?
Genoeg is enough.
But it's not going to solve it, is
Absolutely.
it? So what's going to
No, it's
solve
not.
it? Where
Look,
are the solutions?
We have to focus. We've got to try and prevent crimes before they occur. We're talking about a much wider perspective, talking about education, the socio-economic ills, jobs. So once you've looked at that from the detective side, detectives have got to do the job. There are so many detectives who aren't trained to be detectives. They wreck the crime scene. So that's a SABC problem. That's got to be dealt with there. There are good detectives with 150 murders on their desk. Now, once you've got them to court, you've got to make the courts work, because there are awaiting trial prisoners who sit in those cells for years, awaiting trial, and they could be innocent. They could well be innocent.
I'm running out of time. I still want to hear quick solutions. Quickly, Diane, what can be done in the next 12 months that can change things quickly? The quick wins, low-lying fruit.
Correctional Services has got to turn itself around. We can't have a 94% recidivism rate. We can't have people reoffending. That is one of our major problems. Schools must come on board, communities must come on board, and everybody should be going to their CPF meetings all over the country.
Solutions? Real win solutions. Quick wins.
Yes, I think the solutions, it will be we'll do our job of mobilizing community, ask community safety to help us with workshops so people they can understand what is actually expected from them. Beside that, I don't see us really succeeding, because alone I cannot do it.
I could be sitting here, Trevor, every single year to talk about this thing. I don't want to. There are many topics in this country. Where are the solutions?
I understand. Rams, at the heart of a successful CPF is education. And education in schools, education with the druggies, the gangsters, and all of that. But more importantly, Diane touched on it. We know who the criminals are. The community knows who the criminals are. So we should make sure that we can have protection for those who want to come forward and claim that 100,000, but also get involved. You cannot stand on the peripheral and hope that crime is not going to affect you. You have to get involved. And that is why street committees and a successful CPF is the way to go.
Unfortunately, our time is up, and I hope that we will find solutions. Thank you very much to our guests. Thank you very much for everybody for viewing. That's all the time we have. That's the end of the program tonight and this week. From me, Rams Mabote, in for Tembisa Machele, and the team, thank you very much and good night.